Hello, and welcome to the Preserved Word. I'm Brad McFadden. For the next 9 weeks, 9 episodes, however long it takes me to make them, I propose to look at the mysterious passages, very mysterious 9 verses found at the beginning of Genesis chapter 11. I've been thinking about this for months, since I taken my hiatus from recording videos, and it's one of the things I've been focusing on, just these 9 verses. In the King James, it has verse references, throughout the Bible, and it also has translator's notes. These 9 verses are very unusual in that they contain very few verse references. In other words, other places in the Bible that talk about this subject. And it has a lot of translator's notes. And that's just unusual to have this many in this short of number of verses. Also, the verses are a little mysterious, not only in their lack of other references throughout the Bible, but also seemingly how important this little story is. It's also mysterious and unusual because it simply jumps to this story and then jumps away from it. If we look, for instance, at the previous chapter leading into 10, we see it's just a genealogy. And when we go to the next passage after these 9 verses, it jumps back into the genealogy. And this little story is in between them. Now, that in and of itself is not that unusual. Throughout the genealogies, you will find little tidbits and little notes of history tucked into the genealogy. But it is unusual to have 9 verses of this. And not that in and of itself means anything. So what does this story mean? And I will tell you ahead of time that my conclusions are very allegorical. That means I'm taking this story as a real story in history. I'm not dismissing that this actually happened at all. In fact, my theory requires that it did. But also, I am taking this literal story from history and asking if we can apply it today. Asking if the principles contained in this story are still active today. And that can be dangerous because it's me. The Bible is not making this jump. With that said, I do have lots of biblical evidence to support my leap of allegory. But while we'll get to that and we will walk through those passages. First and foremost, let's take a look at the actual passage. In chapter 11, verse 1, it says, "The whole earth was of one language and of one speech." There's a translator's note that would be one word, or of one words, plural. Anyway, moving on. That simply means that everybody was speaking the same language. This is after the flood. Everyone was communicating and could understand one another. And it came to pass, as they journeyed from east, and they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there, that one said to another, there's a translator's note that said literally in Hebrew this means, and one neighbor said to another, or one said to his neighbor. Go to, let us make, go to. And this is another strange little phrase that really doesn't appear anywhere else in the Bible, but there's this word here that means go to. And it's translated correctly, but yet it is a little strange. Go to. Let us make brick and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone, and slime or muck, that kind of idea. Not what we would. You have to be careful in back translating some of these things. It's not meaning pond scum like we use the word slime today. It just means that they had mortar and that this was a muddy substance. Okay, and they had slime that they had used for mortar. And they said, go to, again, there you go, let us build as a city and a tower, whose top may reach unto heaven, and let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the earth. And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower and the children of men, that which the children of men builded. Okay. And the Lord said, behold, the people is one, and they have all one language. And this they begin to do. And now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. Let us go to, there you go again, go to, let us go down and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of the earth, and they left off to build the city. Therefore is the name of it called Babel, because the Lord did there confound the language of all the earth, and from thence did the Lord scatter them abroad. So we get to what I've titled the prerequisite. The prerequisite for my theory, or for looking at this story in the manner of which I'm going to study it, is taking the Word of God literally. It is what I have always called, the preserved Word of God. That the Word of God is true, and that we can simply believe it. We believe it as we believe any other of our theological beliefs. We believe it because it's true. We believe it out of faith. I believe the Word of God, just like I believe that God exists, or I believe in the work of Jesus Christ. I believe the Bible. Now, that being said, we have the flood, and this is not a debate about global flood versus local flood or anything like that. But my Bible says the whole world. My Bible says, I'm going to take it literally, although that's not part of this. If you have a conviction for a partial flood or a local flood or something like that, that really doesn't pertain to this story. I'm just saying that I personally take it literally. So when I'm looking at this story, these 9 verses, I'm taking them literally. I'm not going to be breaking these things down historically into all the other scholarly points. I'm looking directly at these passages and taking them for what they have said. That said, even though I'm not going to be giving you all the scholarly opinions about these 9 verses, I have looked into them. And quite frankly, and you're welcome to do so as well, but my hermeneutic has, through the preserved word, has settled. I don't want to say evolved. It has settled. It has on taking the Word of God in context and leaving off everything else. And you're going to see in this study why. So, as I look at this story and using that prerequisite, the preserved Word of God, I notice several things. First of all, it seems to be a judgment of God to create different languages, to confound their language, it says. I think that is more than just different languages. I think that he made it impossible for them to understand one another, understand each other's communication. They couldn't even make hand signs. As an example, when we look at the New Testament and we see where John's father went into the Holy of Holies and received a message, John the Baptist, and received a message from an angel saying that he and his wife would have a child, and he didn't believe it, or he asked how would I believe these things. He was struck dumb and he couldn't speak. But when he came out, even without his language, he was able to communicate to the people there. He could make himself understood by using signs. And so this seems to be more than just a confounding of or a creating of different languages. It also seems to be a lack of understanding, that God is confusing their languages so that they could not understand one another. Verse 7. And in addition to just that, he also has scattered them. So there's two things, there's two judgments. There's a confounding of the languages, which resulted in them not being able to understand one another, and then a scattering them over the face of the earth. I don't know. It doesn't say how he did that, if he gave them a sudden urge to travel, or if they suddenly became afraid of one another because they couldn't understand one another, or if he simply relocated them through a miracle to different places all over the globe. What we do know, all we know is that he scattered them, not the method in which he used it. It's a very brief story. But what is here is so profound that because we have to back up one step. That's the judgment. What is the judgment on? The judgment is on them doing what they imagined. Verse 6. And the Lord said, behold, the people is one, and they have all one language. And this they began to do. And now nothing will be restrained for them, which they have imagined to do. Now, when we read the New Testament, and we're going to get into these passages, I'm going to go walk through all these passages in the New Testament. But when we look at the New Testament, we see that unity, us being one with one another, us having unity, us understanding one another, us being like-minded, is the will of God. But there's a huge caveat there. And that caveat's name is Jesus Christ. In Jesus Christ, we can be like-minded when we have the mind of Christ, but we'll get there. What I want you to see here is that these people were trying to build a tower to heaven. Let's back up another verse, a couple of verses to verse 4. Let us build a city. It wasn't just a tower. Let us build a city, and a tower, whose top may reach unto heaven, and let us make us a name, the purpose of which is not to be scattered over the face of the earth. So they want to build a tower to heaven. Are we starting to see a theme? They're wanting to build a tower to heaven out of their own work, out of their own energies. So here seems to be the problem, that this is what they've imagined to do, to stay unified, to not scatter, to not spread out, to not take dominion over the earth, which they were commanded to do, but instead to disobey God and create their own way to heaven. Maybe this is and this is granted again in the scholarship. I agree. Maybe this is allegorical language when they say build a tower to heaven. Did they really intend to build a tower so tall it would reach to God? Could they have done that? Obviously not, right? Obviously they couldn't build a tower that would literally reach the heaven in which God had resided in. But nevertheless, that's the language used. And the idea that they would try to do this, that they would spend their energies doing this, it says, it brings on the judgment of God and a prevention from them doing so. So we need to examine that. We need to look at that. And that's what I think. And really, I'm not interested in a historical view of this. What we're going to dive into, what we're going to dissect and get into the meat of is, how does this story apply to us today? What are the implications of these things we've just looked at to us? And as we look around today and we see confusion, we see people who cannot agree, who regardless of effort and even saying they want unity, can't attain it. Are there lessons here for us? So I hope that this will be interesting to you. I hope that the style is not off-putting, calling it a mystery. I do believe that these things are revealed not by me. I have received no revelation from the Lord, special revelation from the Lord. I haven't been visited by any angels, but I do think the New Testament has a lot to say about this story and about the implications of this story in our life today. So I hope that you'll tune in as we investigate this and as we explore. Have a good day. God bless.